So here we go. We're going to build this search engine. So basically what we're doing is we have a new file here. I've taken my original animals.html and made a few modifications that I'll tell you about in a second. And I've saved it as search.animals or search-animals.html. So the first big change is that we've got an input here and a search button. Notice that neither of these do anything at the moment. We have to implement it. So the idea is if I search that and then if I type that rather and click search, then we should see only this result show up, right? So it's a search engine. So I need to show you one more thing. Remember our animals. This font is too big. Here. Okay, so come back. Okay, so animals array, and you might remember that I used console.table to build a little representation of these guys. So remember that each object in this array has a few attributes, including a token and a gloss. So you'll remember the way that we wrote a function called starts with P, which took a word and returned yes if the word's first letter is a P. So starts with P of Patrick. By the way, it's going to be what? False, because it's case sensitive. So if I spelled it like that, it would be true. But we're not interested in my name. We're interested in looking on sea animals. So that one's true, and our friend the Lumba Lumba is false. So with that function, we were able to filter out those members of an array of strings which started with P. But notice if we run this on our animals array and we say we want to filter that with starts with P, it's going to fail. None of them pass that, because if we ask it what the first element of this animals array is, it's an object, right? It's not a string. So it doesn't make sense to say what is the first element of an object. It doesn't mean anything. What we have to do instead is we need to say we need to refer to this guy. So and let's not talk about starts with P. Let's just say is whatever. So let's say is Poggy. This is super silly, but we'll say here's a word. Well, let's call it animal. Whoops, animal. Okay, so animal dot token equals Poggy, the string Poggy. So if we now pass this in, animals filter is Poggy, we get only Poggy back. So it's showing us an array of one object, and sure enough, that's Stingray, right? Okay, so the key idea here is this bit. What we're doing in this function is we're saying, this, I forgot the let here, by the way, sorry. It still works if you don't put it in there, but it's bad form. So if we say, for this animal object, because when we call it, we're going to step through each object in the array of objects, it's saying, is that animal's token the string Poggy? Is it equal to that? So this means go to the animal and look at its token key, find that value, and that's what this is referencing, animal and the animal's token, and see if that's equal to Poggy. So that's only true for one of them, right? I can't help but say animal token starts with P just for fun. Animal. Then we'd say animal dot token. Let's see, the first letter of the token, right? Equals P. It's getting a little long, but now if I say animals dot filter animal token starts with P, then we get 2 back. We can pass that result into console.table and we'll see which ones those are. So there we go, Pugita and Poggy as expected. So this is a search engine, right? This is the basics of a search engine. But we don't want to write, we don't want to code in the query to the function that carries out the search. We don't want our filter function to have some search query hard-coded into it. That doesn't make any sense. Rather, we want to get that query value from out of the interface, right? So now we move back into the world of sort of the DOM, as we say, the user interface. So we want to type Poggy here. Well, and then when they click search, we want to get that string and then do this and then render. So I think we're going to have another video to do the rendering. But let's just see if we can get the search term out. So I've changed our page a little bit so that we have a new section in the HTML called animals. So rather than just, you'll remember this insert a JSON HTML business, instead of inserting it into the document body, I'm inserting it into this animals section, which is this tag, which begins as empty until we template into it. So if I say animals section, that reference is available, and that's telling us that it is oh, dagnabbit. Where are you? Sorry, I'm not used to using this giant font size. Okay, so there it is. And you can see that it has 4 of these guys that we've rendered with our script. So that's where the rendering is happening. That's a slight change. And then the other change is we have this input with a placeholder value, which puts that sort of, when you have an empty string, it gives you a hint about what should go there. And then we've got a button called search. So we have references to all of these, except I now realize that we don't have a reference to the search button. Let's put one in. And since there's only one button on this page, I'm going to boldly call it button. And now if I save this and reload the page, here's the button, search button. We have a reference to that object, which is that guy. And just so we have search input, if we ask JavaScript what that is, it's going to say it's that guy. Now, the interesting thing about this input guy is that it has some things defined on it already. If we ask you what its value is, it says nothing because it's empty right now. That's why we're just seeing the placeholder. But if I were to put in this, now watch this. So now it knows. As a matter of fact, I could set it to something else. Watch up here. Watch this guy when I press enter down here. Or don't watch me press enter. Watch that input. Boom, it changed, right? Okay, this is because this name, this variable, is a reference to this input element in the page. And because it's an input element, it has a value. So we can refer to that value with this .value business. Like everything in JavaScript is like this. If I say, what is the first, h1, and I say I'm going to save that into first heading, we'll call it first heading. So first heading is this header, h1. It also has, because it's a heading, it has some characteristics like what is its text content, and that's this text. So an input has an input value, has an attribute called value. It doesn't have an attribute called text content. It doesn't. Even though it's giving an empty string, it shouldn't. And just so, first heading shouldn't have an attribute called value. It has a value of, but there's no such thing. Yeah, so different elements have different attributes, and you have to sort of learn which ones are which. But this is the answer to that question of how do we get the user's input in a sort of dynamic way so we can run our function. So I'm going to stop here because we need to talk about events, which is the next step.